Welcome to With Liberty and Justice for Some. We have a very well-timed episode today. Given the week's activities at the time of recording this, the House has put forward a budget bill that is right now going to the Senate that would allow Elon Musk to cut even more into programs at the federal level. And obviously, that's of huge concern. We're waiting to see what the Senate does with that. But we've also had a lot of talk this week about Social Security. We had Elon Musk referring to it as a Ponzi scheme, saying we need to go after entitlements. We've seen thousands of people be let go from the Social Security Administration, people who are doing their jobs that make Social Security run smoothly. And we heard the president during his State of the Union speech take an awful lot of real estate, repeating lies about Social Security. The fact that somehow people 100 plus, 150 years old, up to 360 years old were somehow getting Social Security. Well, two different inspector general reports have said that's not true. It's simply that they don't record deaths because that's not what Social Security does. But no one was necessarily getting a payment. In fact, the law is since 2015, at 115 years old, no one would get a payment anyway, period. So to repeat all those lies, to have Elon Musk saying what he's saying, all those things tell us that they are definitely looking at Social Security. So the good news is we have a great guest, Alex Lawson from Social Security Works, one of the leading organizations nationally fighting to protect our Social Security. And that's going to be a great long conversation. But first, we have a quick question that we're doing with Lena Khan, the former chair of the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, who's been doing great work on behalf of consumers under Joe Biden. And again, we hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Today we have with us the immediate past chairwoman of the Federal Trade Commission, Lena Khan. The Federal Trade Commission is really the number one agency that was, I think, fighting on behalf of consumers on antitrust and other consumer issues. And we are very fortunate to have Lena Khan with us. Thanks for being with us, Lena.
Thanks for having me.
So my question for you is, if you had some unique powers that do not exist, but the unique power to be able to change any one federal law that you think would be the most important or you'd like to prioritize, what would that one federal law be?
I think I would amend some of the antitrust laws to make it even clearer that non-compete clauses are illegal. These clauses, restrict people's economic liberty. They let companies depress people's wages and undermine competition. And I really think they should be abolished.
And this is where one out of five workers right now are living under a non-compete, and all kinds of idiocy from Jimmy John's to bartending and other stories. I believe people are bound by a non-compete, and it doesn't make sense.
That's right. These are affecting conservatively 1 out of every 5 Americans. Security guards, janitors, healthcare workers, people just trying to make an honest living and pursue the American dream. And restricting people from being able to go get another job or start their own business is really antithetical to that American dream and our core views of freedom.
Yeah, absolutely un-American. Thanks so much for being with us today, Lena. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
This week's program is about Social Security. Two of the most important popular programs that people in my district talk to me about that the federal government do are Social Security and Medicare. And all too often they're at risk by politicians in Washington. It's our money. We pay into the fund. Our employers pay into the funds so that we have these benefits when we need them, mostly at retirement, but not always. And as our federal government is run and advised by more and more billionaires, as we're seeing right now with Donald Trump, these funds are more and more at risk. Democrats are saying, no way, we're not going to allow that to happen. But we need to make sure everyone is in this fight. And today with me is an expert on this subject, someone who's been a good friend for a long time, who's been an advisor to many of us in Congress, Alex Lawson with Social Security Works. Alex is the executive director of Social Security Works and one of the convening members of the Strengthened Social Security Coalition of over 340 national and state entities, partners, organizations.
He's in the media a lot. I know you fill in on Tom Hartman often, one of my favorite programs. And you work with those of us in Congress whenever we have questions on this. Alex, thanks so much for being with us today.
It's definitely my pleasure. I'm looking forward to this conversation a lot.
Great. Well, let's start out. So I'm a journalism major from college. I like to, communicate at 8th grade level, talk at a 30,000 foot to start out. Explain Social Security at a 30,000 foot level.
So there was the Great Depression. The Great Depression happened because the billionaires in Wall Street hoovered up all of the money and they collapsed the entire economy. At the time, people didn't understand that that could happen. Now we know that's what will always happen if you let income and wealth inequality get to that level. So in response to the Great Depression, where you saw these astronomical levels of unemployment, where you saw people literally dying on the street because the systems were not in place yet to care for the American people. Many things were done as part of what was called the New Deal, but a few of them that were put in place is the creation of a minimum wage, the creation of and the protection of workers to form a union and collectively bargain, and the Social Security system. Now, all of these are aimed at empowering workers and ensuring that they get the fruits of their own labor, right? That their wages that they get from work remain in their pocket. So we're just talking about Social Security for now, but the idea with Social Security and why it's so beautiful as a policy is it's really simple. It's based on its wage insurance, right? So in this system, or the American system, we rely on wages. People live by their wages. So if they lose their wages before Social Security, if they didn't have family to rely on, they'd end up in the poorhouse, which was basically a jail for people, a debtor's prison, an American debtor's prison, or they die on the street. The poverty rate for seniors at that time was 1 in 2. 50% of seniors lived in poverty. So what Social Security does, though, is it's not a handout at all. It's nobody gives anybody anything with Social Security, and that's sort of the genius of Francis Perkins and FDR and Eleanor Roosevelt, the New Dealers. You pay into the system during your working life. So when you are earning wages, you pay in, and those are premiums into an insurance policy that protects against the loss of those wages. One of them is sort of predictable if we're lucky. It's loss of wages because you retire, because you become older and you no longer can or want to work.
The most standard way we talk about Social Security.
And it's in most people's minds that way. But it is much bigger than that because it happens later, but we added disability benefits. So a person can have a life-changing accident or illness and then they can no longer work. So their wages go away. So wage insurance replaces some of those wages for somebody who can no longer work due to a disability. The surviving children who are relying on the wages of the person who's earning, the breadwinner in the family, if the breadwinner dies, the surviving children are given a survivor's benefit. So the wages are replaced. And those three pieces of the system, what they've done, zooming to now, is reduced the senior poverty level from that and Medicare, which you already brought up. Social Security and Medicare brought it down from 50% to in line with the rest of the population, which is still far too high. But now it's not disproportionately impacting seniors. Disability is still a little bit higher, but much lower than it would be without. Social Security is a poverty prevention program. It's actually the largest poverty prevention program in the country. It's the largest children's program in the country.
By the way, which former Speaker Paul Ryan himself benefited from when he was growing up.
Absolutely. And we're glad that he did, but I do think it's despicable that then, he turns around and tries to pull the ladder up behind him. I feel like people who felt the power of Social Security and what that word security, right? Like what it means for a family to be able to continue after the loss of a breadwinner, or a person with disabilities. So that security is so key. And before the age of I don't know, all the testing and message testing and everything that happens today, the new dealers really hit a
Yeah.
really great name when they
do.
called it Social Security.
Yeah.
It's exactly what it is.
What percent of people rely on Social Security income almost exclusively? Or is their main source of income?
Main source of income, right around 40%,
Wow, it's a
somewhere in
lot,
there.
yeah.
But also there's another level above it, which is people who rely on it for 90% or more. And you're
Yeah.
talking tens of millions of people
Yeah.
who are relying on Social Security as their main source of income or all of their income, right? So we're also talking about an average benefit of I think in 2025, $1,900 a month.
Yeah.
So this is not a lot of money,
Yeah.
right? And so if that's making up 90% of what you've got coming in, which is really what they're, mathematically, that's 100%. There's millions of people who are relying on, the only money they've got is Social Security, and it's $1,900 a year.
Yeah.
I'd like to see one of these billionaires
Right.
for a month, right? For a month, try to do that, and they will fail.
For some of them, I can see it in one shopping spree, right?
Yes,
I agree with that.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I was delivering Meals on Wheels on Martin Luther King Jr. Day and, visiting many of those seniors, like my mom. Actually, I got in trouble on the floor of Congress when I was a freshman because I did a speech about Social Security and I laid out what my mom got at the time was $1,100, and I laid out her bills, and it was actually a negative, relationship. And she had a car that was 15 years old, full of dents and scratches and everything else. But I didn't know you couldn't have supposedly interactive media on the floor because I had a dry erase board and a marker, and I guess you couldn't have that. But I did lay out her exact Social Security expenses, and $1,100 a month for her. Granted, she passed away at 93 a number of years back, but it's not a lot of money.
It is a teeny amount of money, right? It's the only problem with Social Security is actually that benefits are too low, because we haven't updated the system in so long, because the system's always under threat by the billionaires, by Wall Street and the billionaires. If you remember that origin story, it was them who caused the Great Depression. This is a solution to that acute problem, but the new dealers also wanted to build a system that prevented that into the future. And that's the beauty of it.
Let's talk about some of those problems and threats, because I think there's quite a few, right? We know that's out there and we all have to be watching for. One, I think we've heard it, probably the one that you hear the most often is, well, the fund's going to run out by, I think now it's 2035. So at that point, people would get, I think, a 20-some% reduction in their benefit. So here's some of the proposals out there, and then talk about this a little bit. One, people say you could cut benefits. Two, you could raise the retirement age, which, by the way, is also cutting benefits. Three, you could lift the income cap on where we tax, and most people don't know about that, so I'm anxious to hear you talk about that, and any other options out there. So can you talk about, people who say that we're going to run out of money, what we have to do? What are some of the options and threats that are out there?
So the first thing to note here that's super important, Social Security cannot go bankrupt, right? Cannot go bankrupt. As long as America is a going concern, as long as there are workers working in this country, then there will be Social Security, because it's a self-funded program.
Sure.
It doesn't get any money from Washington, D.C. I mean, we know that. We pay.
I don't think most people know that. I think some people think the government funds it. That's why they can mess around with our money that we've paid into it.
I think most people know that. I think there's a lot of
politicians, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's a better way of putting it.
People definitely are like, that's my money.
Yes.
I see it coming out of my paycheck,
Yes.
and they're correct.
Yeah.
It is our money. No one gives us anything. So that is the main source of income for Social Security, is the payroll contributions that people make. And if the trust fund ever goes down to zero, which it's designed to do, then the outgoing benefits, what they pay out, just matches what comes in.
Gotcha.
So right now, what they estimate is in 2035, there'll be a 17% across the board benefit cut for every single person on Social Security. Think of how devastating that is. But it is wildly different than Social Security going from 100 to 0, right? Like going bankrupt.
So that's kind of a myth, I'd say, that's out there that gets talked about in Washington. So what about cutting benefits for people? You said it would be a 17% cut. Again, we already said it's not a lot of money. Some people have said raise the retirement age from 67 to 69.
Right. Or raise the retirement age to 69. They also say 70. The Republicans, they like to keep dancing around so that you can't pin them down on it. But their idea is to cut benefits, because it's important to just say, raising the retirement age, every year you raise it, it's not like a benefit cut. It is a 7% benefit cut. So if you raise the retirement age 2 years, it's a 14% benefit cut. Just that part of the policy. And, the myth out there is that everybody's living longer. Everybody's not living longer. Some people are living longer. Rich people are living longer. Working people are not living longer. Not everybody in this country is living longer. And even if it were true that people were living longer, I don't think that we then are like, okay, well, then we'll just keep working. We'll just work till we die. As long as we live, we should work. That's what the billionaires want. But, if we are living longer, I think people should be able to own their own time. First, we'll have to get to a point maybe with guaranteed health care for everybody that we are living longer. But we're not living longer. Not only that, it's not about living longer, because the retirement age is actually just the age at which you get your full benefit. A person can retire whenever. So it's just a mathematical point. And at that point, you get your full benefit. And every year before that, if you claim early, you lose 7% of your benefits, which adds up enormously, right? When you're talking about $1,900 a month, you're eating into it to make it even harder to live on.
Right. So the Republican Study Committee in Congress, which is I think the largest caucus of all the caucuses on the Republican side of the aisle, they've proposed this in their budget documents, going to 69 years old. So you just said that's a cut. It's going to be a cut of 14% because it's 7% a year. That's significant. But also, I do a lot of work with labor. I spent 3 decades with painters and allied trades. But for a lot of folks who are in building trades, your body can't keep working from 67 to 69 as easily. So that has a real impact versus, like you said, someone who's wealthier and maybe has a nice, more comfortable desk job. But won't that add to other expenses if people then, wind up having more injuries or other things working? That's just going to be a different pool of money that funds are going to come out of.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, policy, I think, to qualify for, the billionaires to sign off on it has to be both cruel and stupid, right? So it has to be mean and hurt people, especially working people, which, as you noted, raising the retirement age, it's an across-the-board benefit cut, but because of life expectancy, it falls harder on those who work the hardest, right? Who have the hardest physical jobs. But, talk about a teacher, talk about anyone on their feet all day, right? Like, and again, if people are living longer, I want them to be able to enjoy their retirement. That was part of the vision of Social Security, to give people the security that if they work hard, play by the rules, delay gratification, then the system's going to be there for them. And so raising the retirement age, which the Republican Study Committee has put out, it's not like they just did it once. It's every time they put it out. And that's one of many cuts in there. So we talked about that 17% benefit cut across the board. We have a decade to figure it out. Until then, I just want to point out to your listeners, every Republican proposal is to do a bigger cut than 17% now. And you're like, that's not a solution. That's just the problem earlier.
I think we're going to do solutions at the end. But let me talk about a few more of the problems. In Project 2025, it was kind of dodgy, I'll use as a word, because I know we'll talk about the Doge Commission a little bit. But in that it didn't directly, they said, well, we don't have time to address it in here. But many things in there would impact Social Security. Can you talk about that, since we're seeing Project 2025 right now gain life in the Trump administration?
I think just to keep it simple, I'm going to
Yep.
go even like more, because as you know, this is what I do. I read it all the time.
Yes.
I can
Yeah.
just tell you
Yeah.
what Project 2025 does. And the reason that they're cagey is because they know that 90% of the American people say absolutely no benefit cuts. That's not
Right.
of
Right.
Democrats. That's Republicans, independents,
Mhm.
self-identified Trump supporters, right? They know, the Republicans know, the authors of Project 2025 know that if you go after Social Security, you lose.
Right.
So what they did is they wrote it in the negative, right? So they just left the pieces and they pointed all to one thing,
Yep.
which is the creation of some sort of commission or some sort of entity that's empowered through what's called fast track authority, so that with 50% majority, so that it can do the deeply unpopular thing of cutting Social Security benefits behind closed doors and not through the regular order where it'll be debated and fought like people by you and your colleagues. And that's what Project 2025 does. And we're seeing it. This is their blueprint
Yeah,
as we
they're
want.
doing it.
And
They're
they're
doing it.
going. So I fully expect, and we can talk a little bit about what I think it is right now. That's what they're going to do. There is an entity.
Let's pivot to that, because you've been outspoken against the Doge Commission. A lot of us are extremely skeptical because, will they go after the Pentagon, where we see some of the biggest amounts of waste and abuse? I doubt it. They're going to go wherever the billionaire class with Elon Musk and others want it to go. Talk about the Doge Commission, because I know that's one of your concerns on this.
The Doge Commission, it is just broader, the commission, right? Like the Project 2025. This is a decades-long plan that they wrote down in the 80s. Like, this is how we'll destroy Social Security, and they're just systematically implementing it, like they did with their plans to overturn Roe v. Wade, right?
Exactly.
Same exact way. They talk about it pretty openly amongst themselves. But so the Doge effort, what it is to set up something above Congress, something that is given authority. Jody Arrington is the Republican chair of the Budget Committee and has actually passed out of committee the legislation of what this commission would look like.
Okay.
And it's given fast track authority, which means that there's no amendments to it. There's no process to slow it down. And then it just needs a simple majority to pass. And that kind of entity is the only way to cut Social Security, because Social Security has some natural protections. On the other side of the hill in the Senate, you can't cut Social Security without a 60 vote threshold. There's no way to use budget reconciliation, but you can
through
the creation of a commission. And so that's what the Doge Commission is. Vivek just got thrown out on his ear because I think the reason is because he was very uncareful. He's the one who actually said, like, yeah, we're just going to cut things. We're just going to go around Congress. And Musk is a bit wiser. He's like, you don't just go out and say what our plans are on TV. You give it in memos to the House, right? So that's what the effort is. It is, and if you don't, like, your listeners don't want to trust me, and I say, Google everything I say, check my work. But if you turn on the financial press at any time, this is what they'll be talking about. What they'll say is, Donald Trump's going to give these enormous tax handouts to billionaires. That is what drives up the deficit, right? Social Security can't contribute to the deficit. Social Security by law is a self-funded program, but it's this enormous bucket of money as well. So what financial press says is, if you're going to give these tax handouts, you have to cut Social Security benefits, or the bond market is going to punish you. And so it's their single goal.
Let's talk about one of the things Donald Trump has said, and Donald Trump says many things, and we know that most of that's not going to get acted on. But he talked about he wanted to get rid of the tax on Social Security benefits. How did that tax start on Social Security benefits? And can you just talk a little bit about that aspect?
Yeah, I mean, Ronald Reagan, as the creator of many of the bad ideas that we're still living under. Ronald Reagan came up with taxing benefits as another source of revenue into the system. So in the 1983, in 1983, there was an action forcing event, which is the trust fund running dry.
Right.
So that's like 2035,
Gotcha.
right? And in 1983, just remember, we had a full pension system still then, right? Like workers had pensions. The system, the reality that workers lived in was wildly different in 1983 than today, which is why the president of Social Security works, Nancy Altman, she's Alan Greenspan's aide on that effort, which is called the Greenspan Commission.
Oh, wow.
And she got, everybody who worked on it is like, today is not like 1983.
Yeah.
In 1983, it was blended, a little bit of revenue, and it was halvesies, some revenue, some benefit cuts, and then the taxation on benefits is right. If you're receiving less than you would before, it's a benefit cut, right? Like you could go at it in a variety of ways, or you can call it different things, but that's what it was.
And one of the things you could do, whether it be getting rid of the tax on benefits, yes, we'd see a little bit of a hit to money coming to the federal government, but the majority of the time we've had with Social Security, that's the way it was. That's the way it was intended. But you could also do income limits, raise the income limits that haven't been raised for a long time, right? What's that look like?
So right now, you're talking about the cap.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
This is the most important thing.
Well, actually, no, I was talking about, I'm sorry, the right now you can make up to a certain amount before you start getting taxed. You could raise that amount even so that people could work a little more and not be affected.
You could. I actually think that it is also reasonable to get rid of it.
Yeah, I think that's been the position most of us have always had. I just don't want them to use that as the excuse then to drive some other negative action.
Totally.
Yeah.
Which is why when you do any of these things, and we're like dancing around it, and I know we get to it. Yeah. It's like the resolve to the tonic. The solution is so simple that people are shocked when I say this. So you can get rid of all of these like sort of ideas of benefit cuts, of taxation of benefits, all of that, just by doing it on the revenue side.
We're going to get to the solution, and I got 4 more points, but I know you have always talked solutions, and so have we as Democrats. So let them go back to this.
Yep.
What legislation right now that's out there that's been introduced or talked about are you watching? I think one of them might be the Social Security 2100 Act. I think several hundred Democrats are sponsors of that legislation.
Yes, absolutely. The 2100 Act is that's the solution. So we're already getting into it, right? Democrats acknowledge the problem, understand the problem, work to communicate the problem to the American people, and have legislation to solve the problem.
Yeah.
The Social Security 2100 Act is a very wonderful piece of legislation. Representative John Lawson from Connecticut, he is a machine fighting for Social Security and has forever. And has systematically gotten almost the entire Democratic caucus in the House onto that bill. It is the Democratic vision in many ways. Now, there's also bills in the Senate to expand Social Security and pay for it by having billionaires pay the same rate as the rest of us. And, the actual answer will be some blend of the House and the Senate expansion bills, but the fundamental pieces are the same. Benefits are too low. That's the only problem with Social Security.
Yeah.
So we raise benefits both across the board for everybody and specifically to some people who need the benefit increases the most. And then on the other side, we just ask billionaires and the ultra wealthy to pay in at the same rate.
I hear you. Deportations are the talk of Washington right now. Donald Trump talked about the border. I met with folks in district who are very concerned about what this means. I talked to another member who literally was talking to people camping out to see if ICE was going to come out and start doing raids in their communities. But there's also an effect on the fund with deportations. Can you talk about that and how reform in general in this area could help the fund?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to the cruel and stupid, right? The policy has to be both cruel. It devastatingly cruel,
Yeah.
right? Ripping children out of the arms of their mothers. I mean, I am steeling myself for the deeply un-American horrors that we're about to see. So the cruelty, which is oftentimes the point as well, to create the fear. But it also has to be stupid. So it, on many aspects, it'll just crush the economy.
Yeah.
The immigrants who are coming to this country are coming to work in this country, and we have tens of millions of them. And in Social Security, there's this big myth out there that Donald Trump really ran on, and he put it in everyone's mailbox, and I heard it everywhere I went. It was in 5 of 7 of the swing states. It was everywhere, and it's fundamentally untrue that immigrants are taking our Social Security benefits.
Right.
But by law,
just the opposite, right?
For an unauthorized immigrant, an undocumented person in this country is oftentimes paying into the fund, most of the time, into the fund, and will never receive benefits. So the idea that you have to worry about an immigrant taking your Social Security is ridiculous. You have to worry about billionaires taking your Social Security. They're working at it every day.
Good point.
And just at the final thing on that is, like, obviously, if we had comprehensive immigration reform, so we fixed the system, because the billionaires do profit off of the current broken system, right? Taking advantage of the inability of some workers to fight back, right? Because they're in the shadows. If we have actual comprehensive immigration reform, you're bringing more workers into this country, and they're all paying into the system, more in the system. It's the single greatest benefit to Social Security solvency that in one policy is from comprehensive immigration reform. That's from the chief actuary of Social Security. So, like, the tie between these issues is really fundamental.
Yeah. All right, this is the part I know you've been waiting for. The solution. So how do we fix the fund? What's the, and I know the answers, but you go ahead, you tell the answer.
I know.
What's the easiest way to do it and why?
So first, the thing to know, you basically have to know two things, and together they explain the whole problem and solution. Not everybody pays into Social Security on all of their income. The vast majority of the American people do, but you only pay in up to a certain point. Right now, it's about $176,000. After that, you don't pay a nickel into Social Security, every dollar after that. So what that means is the more money you make, the less you pay into Social Security as a percentage of your income.
That's kind of the opposite of every tax policy we have in the country in every state, right?
I mean, I just take the kind of out of there. You're like, this is the opposite of how, right? Like, the way that we pay for things is the more money you make, the more you pay into something, because you have more ability to do it. But in this single instance of Social Security, a billionaire like Elon Musk, he's going to stop. If he were paying into Social Security on all of his income, he would stop probably like 1 second into the calendar year each year. Vast majority of us pay all year long. Now, the trick is they have armies of lawyers to put their income in all these different ways. So, people are like, that's not how Social Security works. And it's like, yeah, we need to make it work so that a billionaire like Elon Musk pays in on all of his income just like the rest of us do. Right? For somebody who's making around $1 million a year, it's usually around Valentine's Day that they get this gift, that's when they finish paying in. And then for the rest of the year, they pay in no more.
If you change that, what does it do to the fund?
So Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren have a bill on the Senate side. You get billionaires, the ultra wealthy, people making over $400,000 a year, to pay in on all of their income. So that is both, earned income and unearned income, which is like investment stocks and stuff. Mainly rich people like to put a lot of their money in there because it avoids taxes.
Sure.
You can not only push the solvency, so the trust fund goes all the way out to to above 75 years, you can expand benefits for everyone by $200 a month. And so like the solution is super easy,
Yeah.
right? Like that's what they're like, wait, I thought it would be harder.
It
No,
was that easy.
it's
That's
that
the thing.
easy.
I know. It's just simply raising that. I won't ask you to comment, but the one thing that I was a little disappointed in, I guess I would say, during the Biden administration was somehow we got to this narrative that no one would have their taxes raised if they made less than 400,000. But there is this little hole policy-wise. This is getting very wonky, but at that 176,000 level, and then if you wait to 400,000, we did it because I think President Biden said it, but honestly, you don't want to create a new donut hole if you can help it.
Yeah, as a policy, it might not be the best design. It closes over time. Don't want to get too in the weeds.
Right.
But
But it brings the money in, period, raising that
it
at
does.
176,000. And that's the answer in many ways.
It is, but I would also focus the majority, the big money is on the top
Right,
end, right?
yeah.
Like the 3 billionaires or 4 billionaires who stood behind President Trump on the inaugural stage,
Yeah.
showing who runs this government.
Yeah.
The billionaires, they do not want to pay the same rate, and this is the key.
Yeah.
We're not talking about paying more.
Right.
We're not even saying they pay more.
Which is,
Just the
most
same.
things are progressive. The more you make, the more you
The
pay.
more you pay.
This is just saying you continue to pay the same level that everyone pays into the fund.
And I go around and I talk to tons of people. I talk to retired auto workers building cars, right? They're telling me that a person who built cars, they could pay in on all of their income, but somehow Jeff Bezos is going to, face a reduction in his standard of living if he does. Like, come on.
Right.
It's just pure greed, but really highlight that that's what it's about. They don't want to pay the same rate as the rest of us, so they're going to steal our benefits. They're going to reach into our pocket and steal the money that we've earned. That's what's going on here.
Yeah. No, there's no question when the president said this is coming into a golden age. I think he meant a gilded age, right? Of once again making sure those who are wealthiest can continue to have the greatest benefit. You talked a little bit about a benefit increase you could do under the one bill in the Senate, but there's something else too. So right now, people get a cost of living adjustment that's based on the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. But there's also another index that's out there that many of us have said would give people a little more of an increase, because if you're a senior, your expenses are different than maybe how the CPI is calculated. Can you just talk a little bit about what we could do to help give seniors a little more money?
Definitely. And I think fixing the COLA is in all of, the Democratic proposals will have fixing the COLA in it, right? Because the Democratic proposals, both in the Senate and the House, are just on point. The problem is benefits are too low. One of the benefits of Social Security is a yearly cost of living adjustment. That's not a bonus or a gift it's a benefit that you paid for and you've earned, right? And the idea when we created it was that it would keep up with the costs people face. So that the idea is that after a lifetime of hard work, what Social Security should be able to do is basically freeze your standard of living and then make sure that you can maintain that. And if your buying power erodes, then your standard of living goes down. When I go around and I ask, hey, everybody, do you think that your COLA is too high? Raise your hand. Do you think your COLA is right on? Do you think your COLA is too low? Everyone's hands goes up because seniors, people with disabilities, they're facing costs that are different than, say, a worker, the average worker. There's a lot more healthcare. There is less of some things and more of others. But generally, the current cost of living adjustment does not keep up with the increases that seniors and people who rely on Social Security face. And so there's easy ways to fix that, as and have fought for. The easiest is just changing to this better, more accurate CPIE.
Yeah. So I know you're not a financial advisor, but you are an expert at Social Security. What's just a basic tip for someone who's maybe not even listening to the policy of this, but a lot of people don't think about Social Security until, often that 6 turns into your age. I turned 60 last August. I started thinking a little more about it. But what's just a basic tip for people to understand about how Social Security works that really would have a significant difference?
There's two really important ones.
Okay.
One is if you go to a financial advisor and you're talking with somebody, a financial advisor, and they say anything like, well, you can't count on Social Security, it's not going to be there for you, immediately find a new financial
Good
advisor,
advice.
because that person is lying to you.
Yeah.
Social Security is the rock that you can count on compared to all the risky alternatives on Wall Street, right? Social Security is the foundation that you can build a secure retirement on. So you need to be getting good advice, and they have to understand that Social Security for the vast majority of Americans is going to be the biggest part
Yep.
of their retirement planning. The second most important thing, and they're related, is many people claim benefits early. So you can claim benefits as early as 62.
Mhm.
And many people make that choice based on a thought that Social Security is going bankrupt, that it's not going to be there for you.
Right.
But if you remember before, we talked about the full retirement age is 67. And every year before that you claim benefits is a 7% reduction in benefits.
Significant.
So you're just crushing
Gotcha.
your benefit by claiming early. And that is forever. And there's no one doing that. So those two there are some reasons to claim early. Generally, it's based on your health, right? So, but you cannot outlive Social Security. You can outlive your savings. Many pensions, few people who get them, they erode over time, most of them. The one thing that you can't outlive is your Social Security. So you want to get that benefit as high as possible. And people have to make their own decisions, but make it based on the facts. And the facts are Social Security will be there for you.
Gotcha.
So those are the two things.
So let me pose one last question before I ask you what I haven't included. But the one thing that bothers me is we talk, I think, all too often in kind of terms that are very governmentese, earned benefits, entitlements. Those aren't words we use every day, and maybe aren't the most clear. You've said it multiple times. I say it very often too. It's your own damn money, right? It's coming out of your paycheck, comes out of your employer, but that's in lieu of compensation. That's there to make sure you have this money when you need it. So is there a different way we could talk about this, or we should talk about this, to really reinforce it is our own damn money, and anything taking it away from it is stealing from us?
I mean, that's how I like to talk about it.
Okay.
I actually think that just calling it our money, that's how people understand it at a gut level. And we have polling to show the thing that we can't allow the Republicans especially to get away with is calling it an entitlement, because they're saying, oh, well, this is a technical term. That's not why they're doing it. It's because no one knows what the word entitlement means.
Exactly.
They accept that they have a slightly negative to moderately negative association with it. So you can say, like, would you be okay with cutting entitlements, and get an answer that's like, yeah. And then you go, what about Social Security? And they're like, absolutely not. Right? So it's a sleight of hand. That's why. So we have to fight calling it an entitlement. Earned benefit is what is fine, because it is what it is. But the most plain English, plain spoken, and true way to talk about it is, it's my money.
Your own damn money.
It's my money.
Yes.
And so if someone's going to take it away, it's the same as them reaching their hand in my pocket and just stealing my money.
Yeah. No, and I think Elon Musk would have no problem doing that, even if it actually was putting his hand in your pocket to steal your money.
I think he's made it abundantly clear that, and the question of why with billionaires, that's for another one. It's a philosophical question.
Gotcha.
I think it's a deep missingness that they're trying to fill with money, but they'll never be able to. So, but they are, it's their plans, and I tried to set it up this way. Just remember, why did Social Security Why did it
Exist
create
in
it
the
in the
first
first
place.
place?
Yeah.
Because Wall Street and the billionaires took all the money and collapsed the economy,
Well,
creating the Great Depression.
90 years ago, most people weren't around, right? So
Right.
we're-
And this is the, so
Yeah.
such the importance of doing this so that
Yeah.
people understand. We have to be able to tell stories to each other to understand what's going on, because the billionaires, Elon Musk bought Twitter
Right.
to just make it so it was really hard to get good information.
Yeah.
So we're fighting against people with such enormous wealth
Yeah.
that they can basically sell a false reality. The hopeful thing, though, is we've been here before,
Yeah.
right? Like, we created Social Security you know what we do now? Increase Social Security. We created the minimum wage to increase the
Right.
minimum wage. We created collective bargaining, increase the protections, right? The whole idea is empower workers and working people to fight back against the billionaires getting everything. And I think this is the right place to put it, but, and it's a little wonky, but this is the whole problem with Social Security, the trust fund running
Yeah.
out in 2035. Usually the trust funds are pre-funded for the entire life of a generation, right? This is the baby boom pre-funding
Right,
their
right.
own retirement, which should go to 2065.
Yeah.
That's the life of the baby boom generation. But 30 years were lost or stolen because of one thing. Since 1980,
Mhm.
productivity has gone way up. It's just continued going up. One worker today makes far more goods and services than a worker in 1980, in 1960, in 1930, right? Far more.
Yeah.
It used to be that as workers produced more, their wages just stayed with that. They gained the fruits of their own labor. Since 1980, there's been a great divergence, and all of the gains have gone to the top, the tippy top 1%. Now, the really important thing there is those
Not
are the
paying in.
same people who aren't paying
Right.
into Social Security.
Right.
So not only have they gotten all the gains of the increased productivity, they've stolen 30 years of the future of Social Security.
Yeah.
So the billionaires are the entire problem, which is why I'm always saying the problem is billionaires.
Yeah.
So the solution is get billionaires to pay the same as the rest
I was
of
going
us.
to ask if there's anything we didn't talk about that you want to do, but I think you just did, right? That's the point you're trying to
Is.
get across, is there is a class of folks that are probably causing the problem greater than anyone, and that's where we're seeing this.
Billionaires and the ultra wealthy. I
Yeah.
mean, like, if your listeners can follow the 2 points, there is a cap, right? So people
Yeah.
don't pay in above 176,000.
Yep.
And then most of the gains, almost 100% of the gains, have gone to people above that cap.
Yeah.
So they're not paying into Social Security more. And that is, I don't want to go too wonky,
No,
but I can
you're
just say-
clarifying it. You're making it clearer for people to understand.
And the chief actuary of Social Security has said over and over, you can go check it on the website, that is the whole problem.
Yeah.
It's not that people are living longer. It's definitely not that immigrants are taking our benefits, because that can't happen. It's not about a worker to retiree ratio. All of the things that you might hear out there, no, that's not what's causing it. It's all caused by this divergence where the income and the wages are going to people above the cap.
Alex, thank you. Alex Lawson, Social Security Works, the one man who likely will never get a holiday card from Elon Musk. If I had to bet, I'm guessing I'm not on the list either, but I know you're not on the list. Alex, so people can follow you in Social Security Works. Give some social media, whatever you want to offer for people who are listening.
So socialsecurityworks.org is the best, and actually signing a petition on there and getting our emails. We send a lot of emails. You don't have to read them all, but you can read some of them whenever you want, and you'll be right in the middle of the fight. There's a ton of information, and we're not relying on any platform. But we're also on all of social media. You can find us like Blue Sky, where we're socialsecurityworks.org. We're on Facebook, Social Security Works. We're on all of Meta, and still on Twitter. But So socialsecurityworks.org is the best.
Great.
Blue Sky, I think, is the second best.
No, appreciate it. You guys do amazing work. And, I've been in Congress now going my 13th year, and we've relied on you each and every year, multiple times. Thanks for being the experts that you're doing. Thanks for doing it on behalf of my constituents, not anyone funding your organization. It's really, heartening to have you here today and talk about this. And hopefully people understand a little more about what's at the root problem. The root problem is not we have too many people who are getting older or living longer, or it's really we just don't have income coming in a way that makes sense. And if you don't have to pay a dime more at 176,000, it is probably the most regressive tax in government.
I think it is.
The way it exists. Yeah. So thanks, Alex. Again, appreciate it. Thanks so much for being with us.
No. Pleasure is all mine. Thank you.
Thank you.